Silfra is a place that's unique on the planet. It is the only place where the two continental plates are visible above ash and volcanoes. There's a bunch of active volcanoes, a bunch of active volcanic activity on the island. The whole island is heated by geothermic water. So like everything is water heat, all pumped from the ground. All boiling water coming out of the ground, superheated water coming out of the ground. So this was a place, though, where the glaciers, as the meltwater of the glaciers went into this Lake Tangalier. I think it's Tangalier. All these names are really hard to say. In fact, it became a very commonplace where a lot of the people who were not native Icelandic people or had not been there for a while were just telling you the translation and saying, I can't pronounce the Iceland thing. So Silfra was basically the meltwaters of a glacier filtered through a whole bunch of limestone, filtered into this crack between the two continents. And on either side of this crack, there was a big, huge ridge that part of Game of Thrones was filmed at. And Game of Thrones, everything that was on snow, everything that was north of the wall had been filmed in Iceland. And a lot of the stuff south of the wall was filmed in Iceland. I could see a lot of the paths that people took and all that kind of stuff in what we were looking at. But the wall was there. That was actually the wall CGI'd on top of it, but was where everything was done. So, but Silfra was neat. It was, it's basically a crack. It's a quarry dive. It's a big, huge quarry dive that's a crack between these two continents. But this water is so clear, they encouraged you to drink it. You could get in the water, take your regular out, and take a gulp. And you could drink as much as you want. It was as clean. The entire island, we were told, everywhere, tap water was no big deal. Everywhere was good enough for Americans. But most of the streams and lakes that had no geothermal activity or no glacial activity, you could drink. And it was awesome. It was awesome, 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 because we basically got to go fill water bottles every place we wanted to go. But Silfra, this was probably among the clearest water I'd ever seen. It was very similar to our ice diving in the Great Lakes, very similar to our ice diving in the quarries where it's 100-foot Blu-ray visibility. But it was seriously one of the coolest places as far as visibility and color. We had a great sunny day, and the colors of blues and greens and oranges was just awesome. Now, it's very controlled. They have a ranger there. They have very strict things of doing it. And then each one of these tour guide groups had an assigned spot that they could set up. And it was really difficult for other people to come and just park. They were parking everywhere around there, but they most of the time had to walk. Now, some of these groups had setups where you could walk up and join a tour and pick a thing. There was a lot more of them were like us, where we had the tour group already set up and we were there. The tanks were all brought on the trailer. All of our gear had been packed in the trailer, and we were able to set up on benches. And it was very casual, but we had to get our time slot. And the time slot was basically getting in line. Only 6 divers and a guide were allowed in the crack at a time in 15-minute intervals. So they didn't want everybody on top of each other. And it worked out pretty well because where we were, they have 24 hours of light. He said it's a lot more rigid when you only have 4 hours of light in the wintertime. Like if you go in January and it's winter out there, they get 4 hours of light and that's it. They don't allow night diving there. Now, the big thing that they talked about was how cold the water was going to be. And everybody was talking about how cold the water was going to be. And then they talked about this 1,500-foot walk you had to do from the end of the gap. So basically you're drifting. There's a lot of water. There's a little bit of a current in there. And so you're drifting all the way down this crack almost to the lake. And then you turn a harsh left into a bay, and then you go into a bay that's down there. So you've done a 30-minute dive, basically, 35-minute dive to get to this end of the bay. And then you climb out and you have to walk all your gear all the way back. My wife was a little bit worried about that. That was the part that I was a little bit concerned for her because of her bum knee. But it wasn't really that bad. It was probably great because the air was really good, and probably great because you were just wanting to warm up. But the whole thing was a drift dive. Now, we went 3 and 3. The original group was supposed to be 6 and 6, but we ended up going 3 and 3, and it worked out really swimmingly. The way that it worked is we got down this walkway. The stairs and steps into it were all metal. It was really cool. And you went down this walkway and the stairs and steps into the metal part, and you did a weight check right there. Now, everybody in our group was in dry suits of their own. Everybody in our group was dry suits of their in dry gloves. Some had heated vests. Everybody was in Poseidon's, but one guy who had a environmental regulator anyway. But it was a really cool group that we got. We heard our guide Louis. He was among a bunch of his other friends. He's like, man, I've never had a group like this. Everybody's a tech diver. So it was really cool. Silfra, the thing that I learned, we did 2 dives there, and it wasn't that cold. It was 36 degrees is what we got, and it was actually the coldest water of the whole trip. Everything else was way warmer. But the thing I'm going to tell you is that if you ever come to me and say, like, as a dive professional ever comes to me and says you can't make money snorkeling where you're at, I'm sitting here completely changed, because the company that we were with has 180 something dry suits available for rent.